split up to get things done faster on two separate occasions, and on both, the less important character, Sally, suffers some horrible fate. Then we have 199 to 200. On the whole, not a bad story. A little rushed, but really, this part of the milestone, okay. Then we have 199 to 200. On the whole, not a bad story. A little rushed, but really, this is part of the milestone disease that plagues the comic. Well, bold new Mobius was rushed to a disappointing end, and Eggman was brought in again too quickly, just so that he could be the big bag for the milestone again. I wanted Supersonic vs. Super Scourge, and probably more miles for the record. And then probably written out and not finding Sonic in full control of himself again and into the next milestone. But I digress. In this issue, despite having all the Freedom Fighters and the Chaotix there, ready to kick Eggman down, the only plan they seem to have is to Zurg rush the base and brawl their way to Eggman, casting aside every intelligent character's cunning and planning skill to make everyone into Sonic light. Rather than pulling off a complex and awesome plan that justified the large numbers and not wasting time with the Egg Phoenix to make this a proper 4-issue arc instead of a rushed 2-parter, they basically all go Leroy Jenkins style and then all stand around like lemons while Sonic fights Eggman. I say they don't work as a team anymore because they never make any use of their skills. Well, if Sonic doesn't have them and Sonic isn't required to open a door, that is. Okay. I can understand where this person's coming from. They basically look at, the fact that they're used to seeing in the comic as well as in the classic cartoon show, they're used to seeing the Freedom Fighters and even the Chaotix split up as teams to get things done quicker by using the strengths and skills of the individuals on those split teams. But again, it goes back to what I said in the Penders banning Knuckles archive deal. If Sega is remotely involved right now, in any way, then there's your answer. Now, the third and last one so far, and I'm sorry if this is in multiple parts, I only got a 15-minute time limit on my channel. The next one was posted about 13 hours, 11 minutes ago. So essentially, if it's 11:18 a.m. Pacific right now, you're looking at about 10:18 last night. Okay, now this one is called Busting Out of the Box 2. Busting Out of the Box 2, Boring Invincible Hero. And this is what this individual has to say. And I quote, "This type of protagonist is a pet peeve of mine, and probably a pet peeve of a lot of readers. The reactions vary from indifference to outright rage and hatred. Why? Well, BIH is an attempt to make a larger-than-life badass character, except he is flat and a walking stereotype. There's nothing human about him that the reader can relate to. Now a character doesn't have to be someone you love in order to find them interesting. Like the villain you love to hate, except it's the protagonist. As long as they're interesting, you may end up loving them. But this love doesn't come about if the character lacks depth and is a snorefest. The reader becomes suspicious that the author, either intentional or not, has stacked the deck. It is cheating. The reader is cheated from enjoying the story. Now, there may be some authors who choose to excuse their responsibility as a writer to be a good entertainer. They say they are doing it for the personal enjoyment or for fun. Quote, so who cares if my character is only loved by me? However, things change when you expose your story and character to public enjoyment. And too many times the rosy goggles of an author's love to the pet character blinds them. Instead, they ignore the problems and fail to fulfill the promise that this character could have. Because the character is weak, the story suffers. What they don't understand is that a story lives and dies depending on the quality of that character. The reader wants to read about an extraordinary, interesting person who engages them, who draws them in to see the world they occupy. A good character incurs sympathy and empathy. BIH alienates the reader. Okay. Problems with being a boring hero. The problems with boring invisible hero. The problems listed below are themselves not isolated from each other. Each one affects the other. Sometimes they all blend together. Problem 1. Severe lack of flaws. Any character trait has the potential to become flaws. Too little or too much of a certain trait can become a flaw. Depending on the timing and place a trait can become a flaw. How traits in one character interact with another character can cause several consequences within the downstream flow of the story. In turn, traits with a label bad or good help produce conflict and tension within the story and provide a vital energy to drive the plot. With BIH, this is not the case. The traits used by the author guarantees boredom. They're too perfect, and their perfection allows no consequence for BIH to be troubled with. Also, this perfection blocks the reader from connecting with the character. Though it is the writer's fantasy, it's no fun to read. Yes, there are times that we wish things would go our way, perfectly executed, flawless. However, in story writing, this kills a story, because a story is mainly about struggle, internal and external, primarily dealing with an important change in the character's life that shakes them from the status quo. The reader is a fellow traveler experiencing what the character experienced. If there's little substance, the character's experience will be subpar. Problem 2. He's the author's self-inserted pet to live out his power fantasy. There's nothing wrong with wish fulfillment, but it depends upon the execution. Yes, we put a little of ourselves and our experiences into our characters, but with this there's something off. BIH is too much the author's clone, too little a three-dimensional character. The fantasy overwhelms the story and derails it. The author is locked at fantasizing himself as badass that he forgets that it may be entertaining only to himself. It comes across as bragging and a massive ego trip. The character is a device, and the reader can pick up on this. For example, an in-depth character will have a backstory, a rhyme, and a reason for his actions. If he goes after bandits, why does he do it? Is it for justice? What type of justice? To help the common man? To make a political point? Did something happen to him that motivated him to do what he couldn't do? To protect those who can't protect themselves? A shallow character will hunt down the bandits just to kill, nothing more, nothing less. Absorbed with fantastic tricks and moves like a participant in an RPG. Some may argue that the latter is reason enough. However, the longer the piece of fiction and the more important the character, the more you will have to invest in making them more three-dimensional. Reading connection with your character is important for the long haul of the story. But if throughout the work nothing has been done aside from the character going from battle to battle, and we have learned nothing about him, then what the hell? Even the most mysterious characters have quote tales, such as Anton Chigurh from No Country for Old Men. We may not know a lot about him, but what's revealed in the movie, we get a sense of who he is. We may not have his backstory, and he may remain a mystery, but knowing what we know, we can draw our own conclusions about him. BIH, however, has little to no tales. Or he's such a dime a dozen character that he fails to stand out as an interesting character and ends up fading into the background of the reader's mind. He stretches the willing suspension of the reader's mind. Right. Problem 3. He stretches the willing suspension of disbelief and breaks it. There's fantasy, then there's ridiculous. For some, this wouldn't be bothersome, but for others, it is, and it takes them out of the story. This is especially so when readers have knowledge about certain things because of the professions of interest. For example, when I had critiqued one guy's fantasy fiction, I asked him how his character could wield a 50-pound sword. He answered he trained up to it. To me, this is not enough. This is not enough justification, especially when his character was a human knight. Because in battle, armor is already damaged, heavy, and anything that weighs a knight down makes him vulnerable to his opponent. Knights who were knocked off their horses were ripe for the picking. Some people get up to save themselves. Elves, it was bad enough on the field, but imagine being knocked into a stream or river. Also, a lighter weapon equals a less likely chance of tiring out and endangering others than himself. The swords that were used in battle were mainly between 3 to 5 pounds. The heaviest were 15 pounds and were a pain in the butt to wield. Nowadays, they are seen as ridiculous and are used for ornamental purposes. The main problem is weak justification. A character can still wield a 50-pound sword or any other object, but the writer has to work on making it believable. In many Zelda games, this is done most times by letting Link acquire a magic item that lets him have this strength. This goes for any type of strength. Like in Dragon Ball Z, Goken and allies enter the hyperbolic chamber to train themselves. From their point of view, a year passes by, while only a day has gone by outside the chamber. Thus, Tororam had made gaining a great deal of strength within a day's time believable. Also, he made sure that despite becoming stronger, there was still no guarantee that Goken and his friends would win against Cell. Therefore, tension still remained about who would be the last man standing. Problem 4. He is protected by the good fairy Deux Ex Machina and her other fairy friends. This usually comes about when the author has written himself in a bind, and either by inexperience, laziness, or wanting to keep BIH's honor, i.e., have him be the winner, whether earned or not. There's very little justification for this. Justification in the sense that the reader was unaware of such things, that there was no setup for the reader to know about it. For example, BIH is caught up in a pit. The antagonist floods the pit. At the last minute, just before BIH is pulled beneath, he is rescued. The rescue is most likely a stranger or a friend the reader wasn't